And the first order of business is to elect officers. So at this time, I open the floor for nominations for chair of the commission.
I nominate Commissioner Kinney.
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. So by a show of hands, please indicate your support for Ally Kenny. Okay. Of the 5 members present, 4 votes were cast in support of Ally Kenny. Congratulations, Ally. I'll now turn the meeting over to our new chair.
All right, here we go. At this time, I open the floor for nominations for vice chair of the commission.
I'll nominate Andy Voda for vice chair of the commission.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. By show of hands, please indicate your support for Commissioner Vota as vice chair. So we have 4 votes, which constitutes a victory. Of the five members present, 4 votes were cast in support of Andy Voda as vice chair. Congratulations, Andy.
Great.
At this time, I open the floor for nominations for temporary board clerk of the commission.
I nominate Katie Morris as temporary board clerk of the commission.
Great. Do I have a second?
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we will move to a vote. By a show of hands, please indicate your support for Katie Morris as temporary board clerk. Okay, of the 5 members present, oh, I should have voted. Of the 5 members present, 5 votes were cast in support of Katie Morris as temporary board clerk. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. So now, one second. Okay, so I'm starting at letting the record reflect that a quorum is present. Okay. Commissioners, you have received the agenda for today's meeting. Are there any proposed amendments?
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
wanted to share a brief item, which is that we would like to have some public discussion around the battery storage item prior to going to executive session, and then subsequent to executive session, we would expect to have the vote. So just wanted, I don't know if we need to add that to the agenda or if it's just a okay expectation that we provide some public context before going to executive session, but I just wanted to raise that for the commission.
So, what is best practice here? Let's see.
So can I make a motion to add that as a discussion item before the expected executive session?
So that would be like a 7A. We would add that before there?
Maybe a 6A.
6A.
Right, so after Commissioner's Corner.
Seconded.
Okay. So, where'd that sheet just go? Just might use that as a way to, okay. So we have a second on that from Commissioner
Yep.
Voda? Okay, so we'll move to a vote. By show of hands, please indicate your support for the amendment to the agenda.
Aye.
Okay. We have, I don't know the technical language to say that passed, but for all of our, we are in support of that motion, so we're gonna add that to, after Commissioner's Corner, so we can call it technically a 6A on the agenda. Any other proposed amendments to the agenda?
Not on the agenda, but hearing at least from James, who's on Teams remotely, that they're not getting any feed, I think.
Apologies.
Oh, no worries. Just want to make sure folks could hear us and see us out there. There we go. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we good? Okay, if there are no other objections, the agenda will be adopted as presented. The minutes from our previous meeting held in June have been distributed. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing no corrections, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. We'll now hold the public comment period. I will open the floor for public comment. Each speaker is asked to state their name and keep their comments to 5 minutes. Do we have anyone here that would like to speak? Come on up.
Can I give this to somebody?
Thank you.
I don't know if this one is working.
It doesn't amplify, but it's going out to Microsoft Teams.
So, okay, so I should use it.
You should talk.
Okay. My name is Leonard Huisman, and I'm here to make some brief comments on the relationship between BED, the board, City of Burlington on the one hand, and McNeil on the other hand. BED has stated that, and I quote, McNeil reduces greenhouse gas emissions by at least 85% compared to natural gas generators. And it bases this conclusion on a report by VEIC that came out in, well, the version I have is from 2022. And indeed, the conclusion of the reports mentions the 85% rather prominently. VEC comes to that conclusion by 2 arguments. First, it explicitly excludes site-specific forest inventory change over time from harvest jobs from which wood fuel was procured. In other words, the wood that is procured in various sites is not counted as a source of CO2. And it adds a footnote. This is because McNeil does not own, manage, or directly control the forest management activities of the forest land from which the fuel is sourced. It then gives a second argument, and again I quote, using wood fuel from well-managed forests simply mimics the natural carbon cycle. So these are the 2 arguments that allow VIC and afterwards BED to conclude that burning wood leads to a massive reduction in CO2 emissions. These 2 arguments are very strange. First of all, they seem to contradict each other. If wood fuel from well-managed forests simply mimics the natural carbon cycle, then there is nothing to report. If there is no carbon, effectively no carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere, then why bother writing it down anywhere? Unfortunately, certainly the second argument is a fairy tale. It is an urban myth, or in this case, I probably should call it a forest myth. And it has been debunked for well over a decade. And one of the clear statements came from a large number of scientists, actual forest scientists, researchers, and economists who concluded that, and again I quote, the result of this additional wood harvest is a large initial increase in carbon emissions, creating a carbon debt which increases over time as more trees are harvested for continuing bioenergy use. This letter came out in 2021, so it certainly should have been known to VEIC but there is no mention of this letter anywhere in the report. And a later article, but admittedly 2025, so VIC could not have known about it, makes it very clear that repaying the carbon debt that was mentioned in the letter can occur only after the power plant has ceased operations. Now, I mentioned these scientific facts because at some point the board, BED, Burlington City Council will have to make decisions about McNeil. How are we gonna go forward with McNeil? Business as usual, expand, shut it down, change over to natural gas, do battery farms, or whatever. I assume there are many other options. And rational decisions can only be made if all the facts are on the table and understood. Unfortunately, as this sequence of articles and reports that I just mentioned shows, BED clearly does not understand what's happening with the carbon that's emitted when burning wood. Now, that by itself is not bad. BED is not supposed to understand everything. So it's perfectly fine if it goes to some institution and asks for advice. Unfortunately, the institution in this case is VEIC, and clearly VEIC did not understand the issues either. It simply got the science wrong. Just to make clear how serious this issue is, the total amount of carbon dioxide emitted by McNeil is double what is emitted by all other sources in Burlington. Transportation, heating, it's only half of what McNeil by itself emits. So I don't really know how to go forward from here. The best I can suggest is that the board or some independent person or organization who actually understands the literature goes back to the literature. I will be very happy to mention some names if that's what you are interested in, but something like that. Another possibility is going back to this article from 2025 that I mentioned. I'll be happy to come back. I can't do it tonight, but I'll be happy to come back at the future meeting, and I only need about 10 minutes to explain why this article is correct and VEIC is completely wrong. That's as far as I have come. There is an issue. The board is getting the wrong information from BED, and BED is getting the wrong information from its chosen experts, VEIC. How to proceed from there, I have made some suggestions. I hope you can come to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I have one quick follow-up. Would you mind sharing the 2025 article?
You want a copy right now?
Sure, thank you.
I assume you have the VEIC report.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the board?
Yes. There's another speaker.
Oh, great.
Peter McCausland, Burlington resident. A few things. I think the executive session should be at the beginning or at the end of your meeting so the public who attend doesn't have to leave the room and come back. Also, I think Burlington Electric ought to give monthly reports on district energy and their negotiations with buying McNeil 100%. Even if there is no update, they ought to say that. They're two big two big issues for Burlington Electric. Third, the festival coming up in August, I urge the commissioners to attend. Also, have information on district energy. Now, everyone knows where I stand on district energy. You know, I oppose it, but I'm not an adversary. Adversary is a negative. I don't want to be. You know, BED does a lot of good things. I just disagree with one. You know, it's an infrastructure project which ought to have gone to the voters. It didn't. It's unfortunate. The other thing is it's been 2 years since Quantified Ventures received the application for financing district energy. My guess is that Evergreen Energy and the consortium of district energy has looked for other financing, and if they have, you ought to know what it is, especially if they said, no, we don't want to finance it. It says something about the project. Last thing I want to say is that I appreciate, I forget the person's name in customer service who quickly replied to a request on wood chips and the validity report, pardon my pronunciation, on carbon capture and pyrolysis. Now, carbon capture, we all know, is a fossil fuel industry technology. If it ever comes before the voters of Burlington, it's going to be tens of millions of dollars if you're talking about close to 100% carbon capture. And the other thing on pyrolysis, all I can say about pyrolysis, follow the Lindenville project going on right now. I have to leave to do other stuff. I appreciate my time, and I welcome the new commissioner.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any comments? Okay, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes. The minutes from our previous meeting held.
We did that.
Oh. I just wrote my note in the wrong section.
Check.
The minute? No, we didn't do that. We only did the agenda.
Monthly impact
We
minute.
only did the agenda. We didn't do the minutes. Is that in the wrong order? I only did approval of the agenda.
I have a no changes to the minutes.
Yeah, Brian made the motion, I seconded it, we approved it. It's the monthly impact minute, which is probably what's gotten mixed up.
Similar name.
It's very similar.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so now we're in Commissioner's Corner.
Nope.
Nope.
We have.
Monthly
No,
impact
so
minute.
I'm going by
Item 5, I think.
Yeah, we're
I'm
on
going
item
by what
5.
you sent me for
Item
the
5.
thing, and I think it's not in line with the,
The
okay.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so monthly impact minute.
So today we have Bob Risley, who is a former working crew leader, now distribution superintendent, with us just to introduce a little about our work with the line crew and on the distribution system.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Bob Risley. I've been a Burlington Electric employee for 36 years now, so I'm the old guy on the crew. As Darren said, I was a working crew leader for 25 of those years. I'm currently the distribution superintendent. I manage and arrange the distribution crew's daily work, monthly work, along with the metering department's activities every day. We try to keep the trucks running through DPW. We try to keep the power going every day. We try to respond to our see-click fix stuff as quickly as possible. I manage phone calls most of the day from customer service and customers, through electricians, through contractors, that kind of thing. They wanted me to keep this kind of short, so my best thing is I'm no good at presentations, to be honest. I'm a lineman, and I call myself a knuckle dragger. So I've been trying to do this trying to do this job for the past 4.5 years. Hopefully, I've been doing it well. I'm still here, so I would welcome any questions you guys have. I would welcome any of you to come out and be on the crew for a day or an hour or half. Whatever you would like, come see me. We would like to arrange for you guys to see what the crews do. If you're interested, we'd love to have you down there and show you what's going on.
And just to give credit to Bob, we've pushed really hard on electrification, obviously, and Bob drives a Mustang Mach-E electric vehicle out in the field. We've
It's a
got-
Lightning now.
Oh, now an F-150
We
Lightning?
changed to a
Okay,
Lightning.
gave up the Mach-E, got a Lightning. The Mach-E's still here, though. And we've got an electric bucket truck and another on the way. And I don't think every crew necessarily at every utility would embrace those efforts, and Bob and our team has. And we've got electric equipment, saws and everything on the
Saws, battery-operated presses, no more hydraulics. I drive a Power Boost pickup for personal use. It's a hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to give credit for the
Yeah.
leaning
Yeah,
into
we're-
that.
We're doing very well with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Bob, thanks for your service, first of all. 36 years is a long time, and appreciate it. Thanks. The power stayed on most of that time, so that's great. Can you walk us through what's a typical day like? How many crews are running? What's like an example of like
Sure.
just a day in the life of you and
Sure.
the people on the crew?
So typical day, we start at 7 o'clock. I have 10 line, not 10 line crews, but 10 line workers in the field. We have 2 workers on each truck. We normally split those crews into 2 crews of 4, and a crew of 4 and a crew of 4, and then a crew of 2. So our major capital work, I split up amongst 2 of the crews, the 2 major crews, and our services, street lights, running around stuff, we put on the electric bucket truck to run around the city. That truck is wonderful for that. So my typical days, I come in, I arrange the day, because it changes day to day. There's a plan in place for what we're going to do for the week and the month, and that kind of thing. But it's a lot of fly by the seat of your pants, I hate to say. Every day you're putting out a lot of fires. I put out a lot of fires that come up that just customers ask this and ask that, so we try to run around the best we can. So day starts, they're out. We have a locator. Our underground locator is out every day, especially this time of year, locating cable for contractors and residents and for ours as well. We have a utility inspector that goes out, and SDI, if SDI is working, or if we have any of our contractors working, he's on site with them, making sure that they do their jobs to our standard. I have my metering crew as well. There's 3 meter technicians there, one working crew leader, 2 meter technicians. They're constantly running around the place, dealing with our meter issues, change outs, new customers. They deal with our services as well. We call them disconnect reconnects. So if a contractor calls in, wants to upgrade the service, our meter crew is there with the line crews. So that's, for the most part, we're trying to work on our capital projects and then fill in everything else for the day. Yeah. Okay?
Unless any other
Thank you.
questions.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thanks
to
for
the
being here,
crew.
Bob. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
So we'll now move into Commissioner's Corner. And let me just find the language I'm supposed to use for that, because I don't. Is there a standard? I don't have the exact language I'm supposed to use, so I'm just gonna have to roll with this. But do any commissioners have anything they would like to bring up for Commissioner's Corner before we get going?
I had a question. I didn't know, I don't think I saw it in the general manager updates, but I didn't know if you had any initial thoughts on the, and I should have triple checked that it passed all the, hurdles, but plug-in solar, do you have any?
I was just talking to my neighbor about this the other day.
I'm sure it's coming up all over. but
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
believe the
curious.
bill passed
Right, I
and
think
was
so, too.
enacted. It was
Mhm.
S-202. We were supportive of the bill. My understanding is that it requires a UL-listed panel, which may not yet be for sale in the United States, but
Okay.
is coming.
Yep.
You can have up to 1.2 kW. You're feeding it into a regular outlet, so it's not a special electrical connection. And it's going back and essentially feeding your home use, not for export and not for net metering. And so it would show up essentially like energy efficiency in that sense. The utilities don't really have a role to play. It's more like an appliance than a standard solar interconnect with net metering would be. And so I'm not aware of anything that's kind of rolled out yet, but we were certainly supportive, and we know we have a lot of renters. 60% of our customers are renters, may not be able to access solar on their roof. So if this gives people an additional option to participate, we think that's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other commissioners? I have something, but I will go last. I have a question. I'm not sure where we would want to address this in the agenda, but I just think, given the increasingly constrained resource environment we're in, especially for renewable energy, I'm wondering how best to discuss how BED's long-term, I guess I would call it resource strategy or procurement strategy around resources has changed over the last 12 months and how you might expect it to change.
Yeah.
So feel free to answer that now, or let me know a good time that we could discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, I would just offer, and it touches a little bit on the McNeil conversation in a way, but it's broader than that. We have shown you in the past kind of what we call the yawning gap chart, which shows sort of the resources committed and then the future years where we'll need additional resources. And obviously, with the commission's support, we locked in one resource from Relevate Hydro and resources from Brookfield Hydro most recently. We do have one wind contract in Maine that'll expire at the end of this year or towards the end of this year. And we've had some challenges, as we've discussed, with underproduction at existing resources across the board. Sometimes with McNeil, sometimes with hydro, sometimes with wind. A lot with hydro actually last year, unfortunately. So I think you look at that and then you look at the environment where, and this is just mind-boggling to me, but we have a federal government that is literally paying multiple wind developers offshore to take their leases back and go drill for oil or natural gas or produce coal somewhere else in the country. So it's not only bad from a climate standpoint, but it's bad from a regional standpoint because you're not putting additional renewable energy on the grid in New England when we need it. So certainly we are monitoring in real time. I mean, it's entirely possible. We might want to consider additional resources depending on the production of our existing resources. And we can do short-term engagements that don't even have to come to the commission if they're less than a year. Anything that's over a year, but less than 5 can be approved here, and anything over 5 has to go here and the Board of Finance City Council. So I think you'll see us continue to be actively engaged. I think in this environment, it's even more difficult to consider the idea that you would lose a resource like McNeil, given that it's a third roughly of our energy mix. We are very, very much forward-looking at McNeil. We've had multiple analyses, including the most recent Polarity report, that have given us ideas. And I think what we're doing, including tonight with the battery storage item, and what you're going to see over the next, I think, 6 months of agendas, is we want to build some things. That's one of the ways that you deal with constraints. So we want to put in a battery at McNeil that'll be helpful for reducing peak use and potentially have other values. We'll talk about that more tonight. We want to do a solar project here at 585 Pine. Looking forward to bringing you something hopefully in September around that. Production won't be dramatic relative to our needs, but it'll be something, and it's in the city, so we certainly like that. And then we are hopeful, as we mentioned just at the TUC meeting last month, that we can also explore the wood pyrolysis and have potentially a unit that we could put in at McNeil that would look at that technology and actually see, okay, can we get it built? Can it work? Peter's correct. There's a project with that same technology that's been proposed up in Lyndonville that they're considering, that's in the permit process at the PUC, that's under discussion, I believe, with the utility in that region. So we wouldn't be going first. We would be going second and benefit from whatever the permit process plays out for there if we're successful in bringing something forward. But if we want to talk about kind of a future that looks a little different at McNeil, but still has all the same reliability and affordability values that we cherish, that could be an option where you're looking at more efficiency, less stack emissions, better environmental footprint, but still producing in a way that is consistent with our needs. So we're thinking about all those things as well. As you know, we're still unfortunately litigating the 2023 Integrated Resource Plan. We're working on that in real time and moving towards filing that'll be due later this month. We're hopeful to get some resolution to the 23 Integrated Resource Plan so we can appropriately turn our attention to what would be the 26, but now likely to be the 27 Integrated Resource Plan, because that's also where you start to have some of that longer term strategic thinking laid out around how would we make decisions around resources. Not which resources we pick, but what's our thinking and our process around those resources. So James has his hand up, probably could offer additional detail here. You're muted. No? Still muted, James, I think, on Teams, no?
No, I can hear him.
Oh, you can hear him, we can't hear him, okay. Hang on one second. Huh. There's good insights waiting to be shared here. Just give us a moment. That's very good performance. We know you're not talking.
Right on the bottom.
We're trying a couple different outputs here. Hang on.
Try now.
Okay, we hear you.
Well, I was trying to avoid doing the entire thing in interpretive dance, so I'm very glad that works. So just a couple things. We are also discussions with other Vermont utilities about regional procurements. So we just discussed a regional procurement in Connecticut. We saw the responses that Connecticut got. Vermont would have had an opportunity to participate, but they weren't particularly attractive, and a lot of it was non-carbon in the form of nuclear proposals. Maine is also working on some stuff that we are aware of, and GMP just simply takes the lead because they're much bigger, but then coordinates with the rest of us. And lastly, I'm at very early stages in some discussions for a potential long-term contract for a larger solar development in Vermont. So again, we keep looking for the stuff too, and we would love to get some longer-term stuff into layer with the 5-year contracts, ideally.
Thanks, James.
Thank you. Okay. Where is it in the packet? What page is that exactly?
So
For this new one.
Because we have 6A, I think
Yeah.
you just recognize that it's now the public discussion of that.
Okay. So,
Can I have another?
yep.
Darren, what percentage of the energy mix is in long-term contracts or under contract versus spot market?
What do you consider long-term?
Predictable pricing
Okay.
versus
Well,
spot market.
Virtually nothing is spot market.
That's right.
We don't run on the spot market. In fact, I get a little nervous if we're not covered to greater than 100% of our annual energy needs by known price contracts, because we're also relying on the 100% renewability exemption. So, yeah, for the next 5 years, we essentially have nothing on the spot market. But we're not quite as comfortable as I would have liked against the potential for low intermittent years.
So we've typically, Commissioner, we've been long, typically, and had more renewable energy than we needed to meet our load on an annual basis. That's been tighter in recent years, and we've seen underproduction from wind. The drought last summer really hurt our hydro production. Sometimes McNeil will have unscheduled outages or underproduction in that sense, so that tightens our margins.
It hurt regional hydro production. It was bad enough that also our contracts for hydro were badly depressed, 50% of expected output and things like that. So it was a regional hydro problem, which then meant there was not a lot of things you could access easily to cover the short positions. But again, we normally maintain a greater than 100% coverage without spot market exposure on an annual basis.
So one of the things I was thinking of when asking that question is the risk exposure around supply. You know, we're talking about the offshore projects being canceled. What's our level of exposure, and also in what sort of time frame? When would we see the impact?
Yeah, for mentioning those, I wasn't so much thinking of our own portfolio or our own mix, but more the pressure that it's going to put on the regional renewable picture. And as we go to procure different resources within the region, what type of competition we're going to have, what impact is it going to have on the renewable portfolio standards? Because what we're seeing now in a couple of states is they're reducing those standards, and we do sell into those markets with our existing resources. So reducing those volumes, reducing pricing can have an impact on our financials. So there's some indirect impacts. There's no direct impact. We didn't have a contract for offshore wind, for example.
Yeah. And I appreciate that, and that's what I was getting at, is the general risk exposure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, we've typically been about a third McNeil, we get half the output there. We've typically been around more than a third, hydro, and then a little less than a third wind and solar. When the Hancock Wind contract expires at the end of, or it's in October, we'll be more hydro dependent than we've been and less wind dependent, and the wood won't really change, solar won't really change. Yeah.
Yeah. And the indirect effects too are through the rec markets. So changes in availability of renewable resources, particularly cancellation of expected projects, can tend to push rec prices up, which, to the extent we're selling, is good for us. Reductions in the obligations by the states like Massachusetts or Connecticut tend to push the rec prices down, which isn't good for us generally.
Thank you.
Good. Any other commissioners? Darren, did you have anything more on that, or should we move to the 6A?
We can move to 6A if you'd like.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and pull up some slides while we do for public session.
Okay, so our next agenda item is 6A, the battery storage purchase agreement public session. Darren, can you please speak to this item?
Yes, so let me first share screen. James and I are going to tag team on this a little bit. I think it's loading. Here we go. See if it's up on my screen. Here we go. Very good. Let me just say at the outset, I'm very excited for this item. This is a long time in the works, and this is something that I think in that vein of wanting to build things that we know we want, we know we need, we know are good for our economics and our environmental goals. This is right in the mix as something that I'm very excited about. So we're going to be talking tonight about a battery storage power purchase agreement. And we'll cover some items in the slides in public session. There was also in your updated packet that was posted this morning a redacted term sheet. We'll be able to cover those terms fully in executive session, but these slides we can cover in public session. James, I'll start off and then tag in as needed. I'll start off on the first slide. So we issued our RFP back in December of 24. We updated and amended the RFP and issued it again in 2025 in May, mainly because of the impacts of changed incentives and tariffs at the federal level. Kearsarge Energy out of Boston, Massachusetts is our selected respondent out of 9 respondents to the RFP. We evaluated them and another kind of leading respondent who were the lowest price respondents to the RFP. Kearsarge is the lowest price respondent, so we're picking the lowest price bid. We also reviewed contract terms between the 2 top respondents so that we can make sure that the terms were relatively comparable and that there weren't material differences. We're talking here about a 5 megawatt, 20 megawatt hour battery, which means that over a 4-hour period, you could dispatch 5 megawatts on a consistent basis, which we'll talk about how we did with Defeat the Peak, but this would by far be the most significant resource we have to dispatch during peak periods, of course. I think, let me wait 1 second. It looks like we got a little, something popped up on the slides. There we go. What we're going to have here is what's called full tolling. So we will control the timing of when this is dispatched. We receive all the value. So this is a full risk, full reward type of scenario for us. We would input the dispatch instructions on our basis. We can get up to 2 maximum daily round trips. And on average, we can have 365 what are called round trips per year. So essentially, once every day on average, you could charge and discharge the battery. If you needed to do it twice in a day, you could, but then you would have 1 less day during the year to do it otherwise. But there might be reasons you might want to do that. We're going to be targeting, at least initially and primarily, reduction during the ISO peak, which is when we call Defeat the Peak events, like we did just recently, as well as monthly Velco transmission peaks, which we don't call Defeat the Peak events for, but which also can contribute monetarily to our value stream. There could be values other than that, such as energy arbitrage or ancillary services values as well. The battery would be sited at McNeil. subject to final discussions with the joint owners around that, and I'll show you where at McNeil on a subsequent slide. But this is part of the vision of making McNeil an innovative energy campus. We started with the solar test center with UVM that was located in the Wastewood Yard back in 2020. We've had the Village Hydroponics nonprofit indoor agricultural facility that's located right next to the McNeil farmhouse. This battery is a part of this effort, and then if we are able to do wood pyrolysis, that'll be another part of the effort. So part of this is aimed at that. I would also note that there's responsive to the district energy resolution in 2023, resolution 7.6, lines 112 through 114 said BED should explore battery storage at McNeil. That was from the city council. So we're responding to that directive in part here. This is a 20-year agreement, extendable up to 3 times for 5 years each. So up to a total of 35 years, but an initial 20-year agreement with extension options. Just to be clear, we are not going to own this battery. We are not going to. We're going to have a power purchase agreement. Kearsarge is going to be responsible for permitting it initially. They're going to deploy it. They're going to own it, maintain it, be responsible for performance. We're going to have essentially the full tolling use of it, and they are responsible for decommissioning it end of life. So other than potentially some interconnection costs that might be shared, there is no capital outlay from BED for the purchase and installation of the battery. James, before I move on, any items you want to add on the first slide?
Yeah, I think that, well, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but I think the very important things here are the full tolling is important and the duration, meaning that this is, a long-term agreement. And lastly, that they're permitting it, so it's turnkey. And so we are still, again, we talked earlier, I think our last meeting about, ownership versus contracting. In my mind, I'm kind of agnostic as to if it gets an asset created, as to whether we own or contract for it, as long as it's long-term.
Very good. Moving to the next slide, this is provided by Lincoln, who's here in the room with us, so thank you, Lincoln. But this is a site map of McNeil. You can see the plant along the kind of middle there. You can see the Wastewood Yard and the Wood Yard up at the top. And then you can see behind there the ash pit, and in the yellow box is where we propose to put the battery, which is near the ash pit site. It's an already disturbed site. It is both good from a standpoint of McNeil being a good place to interconnect this type of resource, and also, as I mentioned, to further kind of the energy innovation aspects at McNeil. It's obviously, it's an already gated and secure facility. We don't have to worry about, the aesthetics of adding additional fencing somewhere or cutting trees. This is going to be before the tree line, so we're not looking at cutting trees at the tree line. So that's the location right there in yellow at McNeil. Lincoln, anything to add on that? Covered? Okay. Moving to the next slide. James, why don't you talk us through this one?
I would just add quickly too, Darren, that we did do some preliminary screening for, fatal flaws on that location. We haven't done full environmental analysis, but we did at least look at that from a preliminary preliminary point of view. So, so we typically look at things on a 5 and a 20-year basis on a net present value basis, and we're comparing the projected cost, which is known here, to the expected value streams and identifying what those value streams are. The reason we look at a 5-year, 20 years is the IRP horizon, so the 20 years is consistent with the IRP horizon, but in the 5-year window, things are more predictable. So your probability that the 5-year view of the world will be realized is a lot stronger than your predictability of the 20-year view. So that's why we split that. What you're seeing here is the primary values are coming out of capacity and transmission with some value from energy, and that would be energy arbitrage. In other words, charging the battery at low price times, discharging them at high price times. But again, transmission is a driving as is capacity value. And it is at the base, and we look at multiple cases of forward expectations of the costs. So at the base and high case, it makes economic sense. It's positive value at the 5-year. At the 20-year, it's only positive value at the high case. But we'll talk later about some of the serious uncertainties about the value of batteries in the 20-year window that cause me not to be particularly concerned about that base case shortfall.
And James, could you just mention for the 20-year kind of the duration aspect of
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's covered later, but one of the things that you have to consider with a battery is when you're using it to affect peak loads, If other people are doing that too, and if other people are installing batteries and more battery storage over time, the ability to predict those peaks is in my expectation going to go down. So we are using an assumption of what we can capture for a probability of success today, but we are derating that probability of success very severely till it gets down to only 20% probability of success and then holding it constant after that. So we're making an aggressive reduction in the value over time.
So just put another way, the 20-year is a more conservative look, not an optimistic look necessarily.
It is absolutely a conservative look at, if there is no other value stream for batteries that becomes created over time, what would it look like over 20 years if the assumption about increasing predictability difficulties is accurate? So, and it could reflect either of two things. You could either discharge the battery for 4 hours at full value, but have to get the right 4 hours, and if you failed, you get nothing. But you can also discharge a battery like this over 8 hours at half rating. So you could increase your probability of success, but you'd still get a deration in the value by reducing the amount you're discharging every hour. So again, the batteries have a lot of flexibility. The 5 megawatts is the most it can put out in any period. The 20 megawatts is the most it can put out without recharging. But you could do it 2.5 megawatts for 8 hours. That's absolutely possible. So
I'm going to move.
And so we're capturing either of those possibilities by derating the value over time.
I have a question just to make sure I'm understanding this. So when you're modeling the low base and high case, what is the variable you're modeling? Is it not knowing if you're fully optimizing
No.
how you utilize the battery, or is it
Nope.
tied?
That's the
to
duration.
usage? So how did you model out low, base, and high?
These are projections of the cost of energy, capacity, and transmission over time. So we don't know the capacity costs next year, for sure, or the year after, right? So we have to project capacity costs. So we project a range of possible capacity costs, a range of possible transmission costs, and a range of possible energy costs. So this is basically a 5 megawatt battery being derated over time, multiplied by 3 different projections of the values for capacity, energy, and transmission.
Okay.
So dollars are usually, if you go to the gas station, right, it's how many gallons did you get and what did you pay per gallon? So the variable is what are you getting for capacity, transmission, and energy. The amount of gallons is 5 megawatts being derated by time. So less and less capability as the years go on.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump, James, to the next slide. And I think we kind of just touched on some of this, but we have a risks and benefits section here. I think James just mentioned the idea about the duration and the potential for the 20-year economic case to be less certain. That's bullet number 1 under risks. We also have that market values could change. Obviously, we see that with the RPS markets, the REC markets. They change sometimes, and there's a risk with that. The values here that we're looking at could change, and it could be negative change, certainly. So we have the full tolling, so we have full flexibility in how we deploy the battery. That mitigates, to some extent, that risk. And the third bullet being we have full responsibility for the dispatch under the full tolling model. So we will have to be correct more times than not, certainly, when we try to dispatch this. As James noted on this part, the alternative of third-party dispatch also has a risk component to it as well. So we think that full tolling is the right way to go, but we're just calling that out. In terms
Before
of
we
just
go off of risks, Darren, can I mention a couple things quickly on risks?
Yeah, please.
So
Go ahead.
the market values shifting or eroding is captured by those 3 cases. So that goes back to, we don't know what the future value of capacity, energy, and transmission will be. Market rule changes are almost impossible to model easily. And another thing that's very difficult to model is if the energy prices don't change proportionately. So in other words, if the whole price curve moves up or the whole price curve moves down, that's very easy to model. What if it moves erratically? What if some hours become very expensive, some hours become very cheap? That's something we'll talk about in the next column. But so the market values goes back to the earlier question about we do look at different expectations of market values to understand how it would perform under low cases.
Thank you. I'm just going to move to benefits as well. So 5 megawatts being the most significant by far battery that we'll have deployed, or resource really, that we'll have deployed for this purpose in our service territory. To give you context, and I'll preview my GM report, we were successful with Defeat the Peak the other evening when we called the event. And we had a nice event. We got about 400 kW of savings. Here we're talking about having 5 megawatts of resource that you could layer on top of that. So a very significant resource. On the flip side of sort of the risk, there's potential that new revenue streams emerge in different ways at the regional level over that 20-year period. I was just at the American Public Power Conference, National Conference in Boston. I attended a panel that was with MWEC, which is a joint action agency in Massachusetts, that is deploying much, much more storage than we're talking about here for its member utilities. And explicitly, that panel discussion had that same view, that there's going to be a lot of revenue streams here potentially that could emerge that we don't know about yet, but having these assets deployed early gives you that ability to tap into those.
And what would be an example of that, so I understand?
There's a few examples.
So-
I was thinking of one like relative to states having, peak reduction markets, but James, you had a different one earlier.
Yeah, so just as an example, oh dear.
No, we hear you. We hear you.
Okay, as an example, but I'm hearing myself, it's really, the echo is making it very hard to concentrate.
Oh.
The example would be if ISO created a charge to reflect what I would call energy imbalance. Right now, they're not really spending much time worrying about whether you've got enough load to meet your generation, meet your load in every hour of the year. They're letting the price figure that out, okay? They could create a charge that says, if you have a difference between your load and resources in any hour, in any direction, positive or negative, you're imposing a burden on the system, and they could add a charge to reflect that. Batteries would be prime candidates to solve that problem. But the other thing that could happen is they could just let the energy prices take provide the signal, in which case hours with very, very high renewables, and they're starting to curtail renewables, would have negative energy prices, and hours where there's insufficient resources would have very high prices. And we're not modeling, that's what I'm saying, that the model can't handle that kind of variability well, but it would be an increased energy arbitrage value for batteries that they could realize. And that's the whole thing about the full tolling. If you're not careful and you buy something that says, I'm buying this market commodity as it's defined today, and ISO does something to redefine the markets, you might be left paying for a commodity that has little value. When you have the rights to everything an asset can do, and that would be true for like our gas turbine or McNeil, right? You can reposition it. If it has the capability of providing those values, you would be able to move it into those markets. And so that's, I think, I do think that you can't go to 100% renewable targets without solving the energy imbalance problem, and I don't know that they're going to be able to do it without recognizing a real value of battery storage that they haven't quite done yet. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
So just continuing with the benefits, we talked about this one a bit, the Energy Innovation Campus concept, the City Council resolution. The Valerity report also said that having something like 5 megawatts of battery storage would be very useful for the city as we consider different distributed energy resource mixes in the future. All things equal, if we deploy battery storage, you're marginally reducing the region's reliance or need for some of the fossil peakers that we know come on during those times of the year when they're needed. I don't want to oversell that point. We're talking about 5 megawatts here, so it's marginal, but it does exist as a part of an ecosystem of resources. And
it has been recognized through the Tier 3 program by the Public Utility Commission as being a value of storage in electrification.
Yep. And then just the last piece, which we can discuss more in executive session, but the term sheet, as you saw, has a provision around if there was a defective discharge event. So there's some protection within the term sheet for that, which is a benefit as well. We have one more slide for public session. James, why don't you take this one? If I can get it to move forward. Hang on. It's not working. Somehow frozen here on the Teams.
I can try clicking it, but it probably won't work.
Let me unshare, or let me reshare it. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Just take a moment. it won't go past this slide.
Hmm.
And I don't understand why.
I could resend you.
Oh, you know
could
what? I think
resend-
it's hidden somehow in the, hang on one second. I know what I need to do here. One moment. I think it's in the hidden view for some reason. Let's try this. Let me unshare and reshare again. Why don't you describe what it is while I open this up?
Okay, I will try to describe it from, we look at what's called a tornado chart, which is which variables have the most effect and how much effect do they have on the net present value of our power costs over a 20-year period. And what you're looking at is, so which variables matter and what does the addition of the battery do to your exposure to those risks. So for example, a shrinking tornado bar indicates a reduced risk. There we go.
There it is.
So I'm going to pick an obvious one. If you look at the third blue, or the second blue bar down, capacity with no battery, that says that our power costs could change by, anywhere from $1 million to, somewhere between $1 million to $1.6 million. But it would change less if we had the battery. That's a reduced exposure to the effect of those forecasted capacity costs. So we talked about the low base and high cases, right? Well, the difference between the low base and high cases contracts with the battery. That is reduced risk, and it's lower at the high end too, okay? It doesn't do much for the high end on a couple of things because of the heavy duration of the value. Transmission and energy show reduced risk amounts, but not reduced upper end. And taken in total, though, the battery reduces our overall risk and our overall upper end exposure a bit. So that's just sort of, you're asking a question about what variables matter. Capacity, transmission, and energy price assumptions matter the most. And the battery will reduce your sensitivity to those and the range of possible outcomes from those, and lowering it at the high end. That's a good profile, if you will, for a decision.
That's the end of our public presentation. Happy to answer any other questions on the slides, and if not, I think we would be happy to discuss further in executive session.
I have a couple questions, real quick. So the battery degradation is covered, we'd be contracting for the delivery of the service. So if a battery goes bad, whatever, I think I heard two things. One is that that's on the vendor to replace that and maintain that. But then also, when you talked about in your discussion, can you say a little bit more? I can't remember the exact terms, but I interpreted that to mean like if we have a peak event and the battery doesn't work and we have an impact, can you say more about that?
I could say I could say more about it in executive session,
Okay.
probably, but
Right.
there is a provision to protect us
Okay.
to an extent.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, second.
But, what was the first part of the question? I'm sorry, I might be able to answer that in public.
Oh, James, I think Andy answered his own question, but
okay.
was essentially that if the battery was completely defective, the vendor would be responsible for that
Yeah,
piece.
there
of it.
is permitted degradation under the contract, but degradation in excess of and which is modeled in our economic assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Degradation in excess of that would be their responsibility to correct, yes.
Okay. And then are there assurances, are there assurances about since the vendor is responsible for decommissioning the battery?
Yes.
Are there assurances that they'll be in business in future? Or how do we handle that?
So part of that would be in the final agreement. What we're sharing tonight has the key terms, the term sheet, but we have some specific language around that. There's also a PUC rule around decommissioning. So to get permitted, you have to have commitments around decommissioning at different sizes. There's a size between, I think, 100 kW and 5 megawatts where this would fall, where you have to have some kind of responsibilities. I've seen with other technologies like solar, sometimes there's a letter of credit posted. Sometimes the business simply makes the commitment and any successor business has to pick it up. There's been different ways it happens, but it's a fair point, and we would handle that both through the contract agreement and through the PUC process as well.
Got it. But
And the site license, because they're going to need to sign a site license to use the McNeil site,
Mhm.
and that is also a place where you can address decommissioning obligations and restoration of the site to
Right.
pre-existing conditions.
Okay. And then what's the useful lifetime of a battery?
I mean, I don't think anybody knows for sure. I mean, they're pretty comfortable that they've got warranties that will cover the 20, which is probably why you're seeing the 3 5-year extensions, right? It could be longer than 20, but I don't know that they're sure about it. So.
I mean, I think it would go longer than 20. It might not perform at the level that would have.
Well, that's it too.
Originally.
I mean, it won't last the 20 years if you do things to it that we won't be permitted to do. If you did like 4 round-trip cycles a day,
Right.
you know, right, didn't discharge it properly, didn't recharge it properly, but those are going to be covered in the term sheet that you'll see, where there are specific constraints on what we can do with the battery in order to maintain the longevity for the 20 years.
Got it.
I have a question. How are you thinking about this in terms of a potential longer-term, larger battery strategy? I think this makes sense to do this smaller phase 1, but how are you thinking about how long you want to test it and prove out the economics and how much you could actually add, or is there space at McNeil to add larger battery capacity, and how are you thinking about that now as you go into this project?
Just to put it in context, we have piloted with smaller batteries, but I don't view this as a pilot. This, for us, is utility scale battery
Sure.
storage, sort of semi-permanent installation. As just for a context, if you look at our hourly average load for BED, it's around 37 megawatts. So we're talking about having 5 megawatts of storage. It's a reasonably significant portion of your hourly average. And then if you look at our peak, it's 60 to 65 typically. So this is a pretty big chunk. I don't think we would prioritize necessarily putting additional storage at McNeil right away. I think we want to leave space at McNeil for a potential wood pyrolysis unit and maybe more units over time. That would be a demonstration project that we would want to prove out and learn about. With the batteries, there are potentially other places you could put them and other sizes that you could use. But I don't, at least for the near term, I wouldn't anticipate this being kind of a pilot scale. This would be a really big scale for us, and we would get certainly experience using it like we've done with our pilots. But I would anticipate if we did battery storage, it might not necessarily be at McNeil afterwards. And James should chime in if he may have other thoughts too.
Oh, just that, you know, we are utilizing an existing interconnection that has some capability to handle more. So, for example, the cost of the battery for this battery is based on an assumption of an interconnection cost of X. Adding the 4th battery after this would not be at X. It would be a lot more. So again,
That's right.
You know, you're looking for spaces right now, ideally, where you can deploy batteries with existing infrastructure, or even, you know, in an ideal world, relieve existing infrastructure. And you just, as long as, you know, if McNeil is operating, or if you want to keep the ability for McNeil to operate at all, you can't utilize McNeil's, you know, full output rating at the same time you put in 25 megawatts of battery there, say, right? I mean, they would run up against each other. This would not. This could co-discharge with McNeil, and you ideally want that to be able to happen. You want McNeil to be able to generate energy in stuff during good times and peak load times and things like that, and you want the battery to be able to discharge then too.
Thank you. Any other thought, question?
Yeah, I have another question, sorry. So can we talk about like safety and risk with a facility like this? Like, what do we know about that? What are the, what are the risk mitigation efforts? What is, like, I assume there's some fire risk with batteries and so forth, like.
I don't want to jump too deep into that, mainly because James and I are not the experts on that. The company that would be doing the permitting would be addressing those issues. Kearsarge would work with, through the state permitting process, but work to address any of the fire code issues that need to be addressed. The couple things I would offer is you are talking about doing this at an already existing generation site that is staffed, that is secure, that's not, you know, directly adjacent to a residential neighborhood, for example, or anything like that. So there are some benefits in terms of where we're putting it. And certainly there have been different, you know, conversations around that. I think there have been a lot of batteries deployed in Vermont, you know, through the permitting process, deployed appropriately and safely. So I don't want to at all undersell that concern. And our safety team is already in touch with local folks to begin that conversation. But it really does get addressed through the kind of final system design and permitting process. And not being the specific expert on that, I don't want to offer too much
That's a great answer.
additional
Thank you.
detail.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, but there is, to Darren's point, there's at least, I think, about 45 megawatts of utility scale battery that's already been permitted in the state. So while this will be our first large-scale permitted battery, it won't be the first by any stretch.
Mhm. Yep. Other question?
So I had a question about safety, but you addressed that, thank you. Other question is, I noticed that the greatest value is in transmission, not in capacity and demand. That's interesting. Can we speak a little bit more to that and where,
James,
Sure.
you probably cover that.
why that's trending?
Yeah, so transmission, and again, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here. Transmission is a charge that is based monthly on a utilities load at the time of the Vermont peak load. Okay? And I'm going to pick numbers, call it maybe $12 to $14 a kilowatt per month of fee. Okay? So $150, $160 a kilowatt per year. Capacity is based on a single hour event and is $45 or so a kilowatt year. So an individual month of capacity savings, or the peak hour is worth more than any monthly hour. But if you capture many of the months, you will exceed the annual capacity value. So again, that's back to our assumption of probability of success. We're not assuming we will capture the transmission value in every month. If we did assume that, the transmission value would increase even more. But not all months are equally easy to predict, right? So, we knew that last Wednesday and Thursday and Friday were going to be peak months. It's a lot harder, peak hours, peak days, and what hours they were going to be. It's a lot harder to predict on day per day when stuff isn't, being driven by extreme heat or extreme cold. But we have 12 or 13 years now of peak prediction experience, and I think we've only missed the ISO peak 1 year when it happened on June 13th, and we all said, it'll get hot later this summer, and guess what? It didn't. So, everyone missed it that year, by the way, it wasn't just us.
Any other questions from commissioners? So I believe we're expecting to go to executive session to discuss the PPA. Is there a motion for that?
I move to find that premature general public knowledge of the battery storage power purchase agreement would clearly place the Burlington Electric Department at a substantial disadvantage per Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Great, is there a second?
Second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are those opposed? I'll now entertain a motion to enter executive session.
I move that the commission enter into executive session with BED staff to discuss the battery storage power purchase agreement under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we are now in executive session as of 6:08. I guess we're coming back from executive session on the battery storage power purchase agreement. Is there any further discussion on the item that would be appropriate in public session?
Well, I have one, and it comes from a recent drive that I took. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but, and I know we don't have the permitting obligation from this, but I'm a bit concerned because I read the story about Virgin and their BESS. Then I drive through the Adirondacks to through Ironville on my way to Ithaca, the home of electricity, where electricity was started, and I see the same BESS with the slash through its sign. And so, is there an expectation? I know you said earlier that you're working with interested parties, but how does that not happen this time?
No, I appreciate the question. I've given it some thought. I've read this story about Virgins. I don't have direct knowledge, but I've seen every form of energy production in Vermont been opposed by some entity or a group or a community or a neighbor. We've seen it with solar in a variety of projects. We've certainly seen it with wind very clearly. We've seen it even this evening with wood, certainly. We know there are folks who are opposed to that. And then, with hydro, there's been opposition to expanding access in Canada for a variety of reasons with Hydro-Quebec and other things like that. Yep. And with existing dams, when they go to be relicensed, we've seen in Vermont even constraints been placed on them. So I think batteries are not immune from that potential of being opposed. And my understanding in Virgins is it was being sited in an area that had a residential location nearby where a homeowner was seeking to subdivide and build several new homes that were going to be very much adjacent to the battery. I think the distinction here as we're looking at McNeil is an already disturbed active energy generation site. It's not next to a residential area. The battery would be in an ash pit, which is very much the definition of a disturbed area already. So we're repurposing essentially an environmentally disturbed site for a good purpose. And I think that we are putting it in a place that's appropriate for energy use. So I can't predict that nobody will have a concern or an opinion or a critique, but I think the idea for battery storage has been broadly supported in Burlington. I think we've had not only the council resolution and the Valerity report, but I think policymakers have been really clear that they support battery storage as part of a distributed generation approach. And so I think by and large, this is in a good position to succeed relative to that.
And I agree with all of your comments, but the issue I have is it's logic.
Fair
And
enough.
As you've seen, logic doesn't necessarily rule the day. And
Yeah.
that's why I mentioned the comment about getting in front of this BESS, because seeing it twice in one drive in 2 different states and towns, it's just like,
I'll offer one other distinguishing point that might be pertinent here, which is my other understanding with the Virgins project is it was being developed, but there was not yet a utility agreement for what it was going to be used for. And I know in cases with solar, for example, where there's a 20 megawatt project being proposed in southern Vermont, but the power and or the renewable credits was going to be contracted out of state, then there's a feeling, whether right or wrong, in a community of, hey, why are we bearing the burden if we're not receiving the benefit?
Okay.
As a municipal utility, 100% of the benefit flows directly to the ratepayers of Burlington. So to the extent anybody is concerned about, what's the benefit and who's going to benefit, it's our ratepayers, it's our community, it's all of us who live here. So I think that's a distinguishing aspect as well.
yeah, I could see an MPA meeting and so forth where you get out in front and say, here's the great advantage to it, to not let someone take an advantage or an opportunity to try and flip it to something else.
No, I appreciate that, yes. Yep.
Great.
Okay. So let's move to a vote on the battery storage power purchase agreement. So I'll now entertain a motion on the approval of the battery storage PPA.
I'll make that. I move that the Burlington Electric Commission approves and recommends moving to the City Council a battery storage power purchase agreement with Kearsarge Energy consistent with the term sheet presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll be at Board of Finance City Council on Monday to present at those governing bodies, and then we'll keep you updated on the progress as we go.
Thank
So,
you.
thank
Darren
I would
and
like
James.
to thank the commission for allowing me to lead the agenda. I have a difficult situation here at home, and it's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it.
Okay, over to you, Darren, for the GM update.
I will be brief, as I know we're already deep into the meeting and have other agenda items as well. First thing I did want to do was introduce Jared Pellerin, who's with us. Jared is our new Principal Counsel and Regulatory Compliance Officer, a position that we've discussed here. So Jared comes to us most directly as previously Deputy City Attorney in South Burlington, but has been in the City Attorney's Office in Burlington as Deputy and Acting City Attorney previously. And we're really excited to have him with us. So I just wanted Jared to have a chance to meet the commission and the commission to meet Jared. So.
Good evening, everybody. Excited to be here. I'm glad to be joining the BED team.
Could you, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Folks on it.
In front of the microphone.
Again, just good evening. Jared Pellerin, and excited to be part of the BED team. Excited to work alongside Darren and the wonderful exec leadership, as well as the rest of the staff, doing good things for Burlington Electric on behalf of the ratepayers. So, and excited to work with you all too as we move forward.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Glad you're here.
So that was exciting. Dan Edson is also on board, who I know some of you know, and some of you will meet soon. If you don't know, he is out this week, but we'll have him at a future commission meeting. He's our manager of energy services, replacing Chris Burns after 36 years of service from Chris. So we're excited to have Dan on board as well. Other good news, on the 1st of the month, we signed a new EW, which was approved on the 29th of June with City Council. So we had the mayor and Jeffrey Ramet from IBEW Local 300 here. We're really pleased to continue to have a really strong working relationship between the union and management and the city. And this 3-year deal builds on a previous 4-year agreement. And it's good to have some stability as well in those agreements, and we'll look forward to implementing all the terms with the IBEW. Mayor's office had a press release with details if you're interested. We've discussed battery storage at length, so I won't belabor that point. We had that in the update here. I did just want to mention a little more detail, the solar canopy, which I hope very much, if things go well, we'll be bringing you for consideration in September. That would be something we will likely put capital into as opposed to a PPA. This would be for approximately 130 kW of canopy solar that would be located in the visitor parking area out here. We're working through kind of how it would be, how it would be worked with our soil restrictions that we have, given this is a brownfield site, a Superfund site nearby. But we're working with a proposal to do that with bifacial panels, so that if the snow is out and the sun's reflecting, they can produce underneath even if they were covered on top. And not a huge amount of energy production, as I mentioned, but a good lead by example opportunity. We want our customers to come in and park under a solar canopy and know that we're producing local renewable energy right here in the parking lot. We have 100 kW or so on the roof of this building here, so it'll, more or less double, more than double probably the amount that we have at 585 Pine. So we had a proposal for that. We're working with the company to try to finalize the details and hopefully bring that to you in September.
And does a project like that have a positive NPV?
It's an interesting question. So the way we're trying to evaluate it is if we're doing a capital outlay with 20-year debt, will we have a kind of a simple payback prior to 20 years? And the answer at the moment is yes. I'm waiting to finalize the economics. A canopy structure is not the most economic solar.
Right.
I mean, you could do a very ugly ground-mounted solar and get better economics. We want to be mindful of the aesthetics. This is a semi-historic building here, in a way. It's a mid-century modern building, and we appreciate that we're located in a residential neighborhood, and so doing a canopy provides a little bit of parking cover benefit and some aesthetic benefit. There may be some cost associated with that. So, is it at a power cost that we would contract for if we were buying something kind of on the market? Perhaps not. Does it have a payback relative to the capital? Yes, it does. If we can maintain those economics through the final conversations, then we'll bring you something.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. And certainly we've heard from others, the Tuke and others, about wanting to do more solar in Burlington, so we're trying to be responsive to that as well. The DPS ARC audit, provide an update. So we've been meeting intensively with the team on a pretty much a weekly basis. Myself, Emily, will be meeting with them tomorrow to get an initial draft report. So it's moving fairly quickly with a lot of intensive work product. We know there will be additional review by the DPS, and then there will be a final report that will be ready to be submitted to the PUC in early August, and a presentation of the PUC either August 24th or 26th, I believe. We've not waited on some things that have arisen as we've learned kind of some different items through the process. For example, we are standardizing our succession planning template, and our leadership team is currently working to fill out a standardized succession planning template that we would then update on an annual basis. As folks remember, the McNeil-Recker issue was partly due to a succession planning issue where a memo wasn't completed in the way that we needed. So we'll do this with the leadership team, and then we'll move on to other employees who have unique job responsibilities that may not be redundant within the organization. So that's one step we're taking as a result directly of learning through this process. We're looking at some of our business processes and how we can improve and tighten those up. We're working on some ideas around regulatory kind of delegation and checklist type of setup so that we standardize sort of the regulatory filing process in a more rigorous way. I think some of the steps we've taken, like forming a regulatory working group that's meeting cross-disciplinary once a week, creating Jared's position, for example, these are all things that will yield benefits and that I think they recognize as having some benefit as well. I think it's been a very productive and constructive process. I look forward to it continuing to be. I think we've done everything that's been asked of us within the process, as you would expect. And so we're looking forward to getting the final report. And then what steps can we implement more immediately? What steps might require some more long-term planning and thinking? But that's kind of where that is. I can pause if there are questions on that topic, if any.
I just guess that you will be privy to the report and you'll send it around once we have.
The final,
Yes.
yes. Once the final is made public, we will share that. Absolutely. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we had a successful Defeat the Peak event on the 2nd. It was pretty hot in Boston and the southern New England region that drives our regional peaks. Hot here as well. COTS was our nonprofit partner for the event, chosen by Chris Burns, he was the winner of the Jim Reardon Public Service Award. So each year the winner of that award gets picked the first nonprofit we partner with for Defeat the Peak. So we will have on the 21st, I believe, a check ceremony with COTS. They get $1,000 for being our nonprofit partner and helping us drive participation in the event. We may have other events this summer. That may not be the only one. But I've seen it sometimes where we only end up with 1 or 2 events. So we'll have additional Defeat the Peak events possible through September. So we'll keep everyone updated.
What is how much is it at these peak events? How much of a spike is there?
Well, in the region, it can be, significant, thousands of megawatts above normal. For us, what we saved through this particular kind of event was over 400 kW. I want to share too that I believe 194 kW of that was from our Building Giants program, which we've talked about here at the commission, and which is a commercial sector, at the moment, commercial sector focused. We're going to have a residential component as well, where we can work with buildings on automated controls during these peak events. But that means that another 200 plus kW was savings driven by individuals acting in their own capacity, which we appreciate as well. So
I did turn off my AC.
we appreciate it. We thank everybody who takes steps, and we do model it to make sure that we have an expected use and then an actual, and we can tell the delta in terms of the savings. So
I was thinking about the batteries when I asked the question.
Yeah.
In terms of how much of that peak.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like from your average load in the 40s megawatts to a peak load in the 60s, it can basically a 50% increase.
Yeah.
in the load.
That's right.
at a peak.
5
megawatts being roughly 10-ish%.
Yeah, 5 megawatts is a big deal for us. 400 kW is very nice, and we appreciate that savings, and it helps with our capacity cost. But 5 megawatts on top of that will be a much bigger dent, for certain. Yeah. And as we've shared, whatever's going on in Burlington doesn't necessarily drive the peak. So you could have a regional peak because of Hartford and Boston, and it could be temperate in Burlington, and you might get some natural benefit from that just off the bat, in that our daily peak might not be for the year, might not be the ISO peak, but there was some coincidence in my view between the heat and the region, across the region on that day. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had a reasonable spike as well. Yeah. That's everything I have on the GM report. Happy to answer any other questions, or happy to move on.
Okay, everyone's good on the commission on that? Okay. Emily, over to you for financial update. Salud.
Good evening. I'm Emily Stebbins-Wheelock. I'm the CFO and Manager of Strategy and Innovation. I present the financial results every month to the commission for the 2 months prior. Tonight we're going to be going over May results. The team is still closing June. So for the month of May, we had a net income of $533,000 compared to a budgeted net income of about $2 million. Obviously, that's an unfavorable variance pretty significantly of $1.5 million. Major reason for that is in the power supply revenues, as you'll see. Some of that will persist into a full year negative variance to budget due to, as we've been talking about throughout the year, lower volumes of renewable energy credits available for sale because of lower production in prior periods. However, some of that delta in this month, if you remember, April rec revenues were better than budget because we had some deliveries. The timing was off. So we budgeted to receive all of the spring recs in May. We delivered some of them in April, and we're going to deliver a few more in June. So June will have a positive variance. April had a positive variance. Together, they won't add up to the 2.6 million that we had budgeted for May. I think we're going to be about $1 million off for the year to date, like 900,000 something for the year to date. So that's the major driver. Just working our way down from the top. Sales to customers modestly under budget, only 22,000 off. Other revenues, mostly EU, 101,000 off. Net power supply was worse than budget as well, to the tune of $403,000. Transmission was over budget. May was the first month that we saw the effect of the increased Velco transmission fees as a result of the FERC return on equity order that came out in late February. So that was a contributor there. McNeil was offline all month, so we had savings on fuel, but then we were over budget on purchased power, partly because McNeil was offline, but also because we had the new Relevate and Brookfield contracts energy coming in, which is good from a power supplies perspective, but we just didn't have it in the budget, so it's a budget variance. Other operating and maintenance expense was positive to budget by 141,000. Depreciation up a little, taxes down a little, and then in other income and deductions, we again have a positive variance due to the timing of customer contributions to capital projects. And then year to date, we have a net income of 2.8 million compared to a budgeted value at this point in the year of 3.1 million. So that's about 350,000 worse than budget. Any questions before I move on to the next page?
Do you think the full year net income's going to land okay? I mean, perhaps under budget, but not drastically worse?
Yeah. Trying to remember if we
I know it's early.
2.1, yeah. Were we projecting around 2 or 2.5?
What I think we looked at, and this is
Last
just
forecast.
preliminary, was that the June rec revenues that Emily mentioned that are going to come in that weren't budgeted were roughly equivalent to, like, if they came in this month, we would be pretty close to net income expectation for this month. So, you know, I mean, 2.8 is still good. It's
Yeah.
still very positive, but it's possible we land pretty close to where we predicted if everything else in June goes the way we thought.
Just give me just a second. Let me refresh on that. We didn't rerun a forecast after May results, so I can tell you where we thought we would be at the end of April. Get this to move over. Yeah, we were budgeting 2.2, so about $1 million off. Most of it kind of like you can correlate back to that rec revenue, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
So.
And sorry, the rec revenues are under power supply
Under
revenues
power
or
supply.
the other revenues?
Yeah, power supply revenues. Yeah.
They lag, just for information, they lag in a certain respect because when they're produced in a particular year, they don't necessarily show up as revenues at the exact time that they're produced, obviously. So some of this is due to underproduction that happened not just kind of this year, but there was some.
6 to 9 months ago.
Yeah, it was in
Yeah.
in a previous window, particularly all that hydro and wind that we didn't have at levels that we expected has had an impact on that.
Okay. Go to the next page. Capital spending for May year-to-date was $7.3 million, just under 50% of the budget. Saw the production total move up compared to budget, as well as the distribution and general categories. I continue to think this is May, so June, yeah, I think we'll land around 8.5 or 9 by the end of June in terms of capital spending. And then down to cash, we had operating cash of $14.9 million as of May 31st. And that was $800,000 better than budget. And the Moody's credit rating factors, 1.16 for the adjusted debt service coverage ratio, and 154 days cash on hand, including the line of credit. So cash is looking okay. It's helped by the timing of those customer contributions. In some cases, we're receiving now money that we had budgeted to receive last fiscal year for projects we did last fiscal year that we'd invoiced and are finally getting paid. It's the ADSCR that's going to be a little more tenuous to see where that lands for June 30.
Any commissioners have any questions?
Sorry, basic question, what's our fiscal year?
July 1 to June 30.
1 month ago from the May closing numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I have a comment, actually. So looking at the benchmarking report that was part of our packet,
Mhm.
and, BED is quite strong relative to the other utilities, and just want to say nice work to Emily and Darren and all of you that I know that it's not easy, and we sit here month after month and hear these reports and understand the complexity that goes into managing all of this, but it was really quite a good report card, I thought, if you will.
Thanks.
And I agree as well. I had the similar thought.
Thanks.
After going through that in comparison against the rest of the Vermont utilities, it was very impressive. Thank you.
It's our next agenda item.
I think we were going to plan to go through that. Is that next?
Is it?
Is next.
Emily asked me to say that as a setup.
As a segue?
Segue, yeah, hold on.
We appreciate it.
Good bridge, good bridge.
Hang on, let me share again then. Get back to this piece.
I can't find, what page is production versus budget for McNeil? Do I see that?
That's a graph.
Yeah, it's a chart.
Like
That
There's
page
one of those,
6, that's 7 or 8
magenta
or
bars,
something
yeah.
like that.
Should have numbers at the bottom of it, too.
Residential
Oh, yeah, they're there,
customers,
they're there.
delivery days, calling delivery days.
It is there.
Oh, I'm not finding it.
It's after net power supply. So it's page 57 of the PDF.
Oh, great. Nope, that's not the same one. I had noticed, I didn't write down a formal question, but the production was lower than budget for the month, is that correct?
Yeah.
And why?
Production was 0 because we were still in outage.
Outage lasted all the way.
And that was planned after you set budget?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
what I
it
was
lasted
wondering.
all the way through May and into June. We had to extend it by a week. And we've
Right.
been back on some in June, but we've had some issues with the ash in the conveyor system. So we've been on during some of the higher price times, which is great, but we've had to work through a couple of times where we've come offline and had to clean things out or find air leaks. So you'll see production in June, but it won't be probably at the level that was budgeted in all likelihood. Yeah.
And you still believe that you'll be back up to speed on maintenance and all that, looking ahead to next year and peak and all that with the capital delays?
For McNeil?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have another outage this year, did we?
Yeah, we're planning a fall outage.
October, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So our goal is to run, you know, July, August, September. And then we'll probably run through most of the stockpile of wood. We'd come off. We'll be off probably until, you know, November, December, depending on the weather and the energy. But the biggest thing would be to have the wood and be in good maintenance condition to run December through March. So I don't have any reason to expect we won't be able to do that. And during the most recent peak period where the prices were very high on the grid, McNeil was running, so that was helpful as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're good, unless any commissioners have anything else. So now, Emily, again to you.
Sure, thanks. So these were slides that were shared with us. They were prepared by the Vermont Department of Public Service. They recently did a sort of benchmarking exercise across the electric utilities in Vermont. We did not prepare these slides, but we have the department's permission to share them with you. So I just thought we would walk through them because we found it interesting and we thought it would be of benefit to the commission and the Burlingtonians to have a sense. So these are just all the folks that the department met with. They have a few themes here around rate cases, liquidity, long-term debt and capital structures, succession and staffing, a particular Fidium pole maintenance issue that does not relate to us, right? The Fidium pole maintenance issue was not relevant to us. No, okay, good, that's what I thought. And rate case reluctance is as they phrased it. And then some recommendations following to people, tools, and requirements. So we'll just kind of run through the data. DPS is observing here that more and more utilities have been filing rate cases and that it looks to continue to be that way in 2026. They know of 12 of the 17 who are planning to file a rate increase this year. That includes us, of course. But you can see the dramatic uptick in rate filings in starting a little bit in 22, but certainly increasing in 23 and beyond. This is a look at just the recent rate increases that the utilities have filed when they had changed their rates before. And so these are the planned filing dates that the department is aware of and what the utilities are planning to ask for or have asked for to date. And then their most recent rate change and what that request was. So they're expecting all but 3 to file rate cases in 26. You can see that our 2.99% for 2026 is significantly lower than the rest that are known at this time. And this is a sort of color-coded look at rate changes over the past 18 years. The compound annual growth rate is the bottom 2 rows for the past 15 years and then the past 5 years. So you can see that BD's sort of better than some, not as good as some, kind of in the middle of the pack on the 15-year growth rate. Certainly some have had much more steep increases. And then this is just a slide focusing on those 2 bottom rows, observing that the short-term 5-year growth rates are 2 to 3 times longer than the long-term growth rate, noting an affordability issue here created by that. This is just a benchmark saying what S&P's guidance is for municipal utilities. We've provided some feedback to the department that they may want to look at the Moody's guidance since that's what we use. And I believe the VEPSA is rated by Moody's as well. And so this is looking at the cash on hand or liquidity. As you can see, there's quite a variation. BED has the highest available liquidity. Some of the smaller munis have very low liquidity. And then also that there's a some variability in the sort of use of lines of credit, right? Some are using them, some are not.
How does Burlington Electric's credit rating compare?
We are A3 by Moody's. I do not know everybody else's credit rating off the top of my head.
Because ours is, our credit availability is so strong.
I believe we have a stronger credit rating than VEPSA does.
Than VEPSA, yes.
Which represents the joint action agency for most of the municipal
Mhm.
utilities.
Mhm.
So I don't know what GMP or Vermont Electric's credit ratings look like.
Yeah.
Ours has been pretty strong.
Yeah, I'm just guessing it must be, I mean, we stand out by so much.
Yeah, we do okay on the liquidity. That 141 days cash is counting that $10 million line of credit. And Moody's on their scorecard, they kind of give you two grades. The sort of unofficial grade includes the line of credit. The official grade does not, because it's not quite the same as having $10 million in the bank. You know, there are terms and conditions and a few strings attached or limits to your ability to access it. But it's quite hard to do, and from what I've heard, rare that they will actually treat it that way. And so the 80 days is more around what you will see on our official scorecard. But
Although it was 96 on the last one, on the financials for this one. So
Right,
it's a little
right.
higher than what was reported here.
this is
which
as
a little
of
out date.
this is as of audited fiscal 25.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's still really strong.
Yep.
Agreed. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. This is sort of just looking at, you know, the ratio of long-term debt to the asset base. So we're about 50-50. And then your accumulated depreciation as a percentage of your gross plant, to sort of look at how fully depreciated are your systems, how old or young are they in terms of the capital investments you've been making. So we are kind of over here, 55% in the long-term debt, kind of in the middle as a ratio, but higher toward the top when relative to the other munis. You can see some of the small munis are rather debt averse. They haven't been borrowing. And then accumulated depreciation over gross plant. We're also kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of, like, yeah, in the median. Another piece of feedback that we gave to the department to consider is that accumulated depreciation over gross plant, like if what you care about is distribution system reliability, you should probably limit that calculation to distribution system depreciation and gross plant. So for example, we own several generation assets. Vermont Electric doesn't own any, right? They're just a distribution system. So if you take out our generation assets and calculate it just on depreciation, just on distribution system, our ratio is more like 48% instead of 54%. So, you know, they took that in. They may update these slides. I think they intend them to be sort of a living presentation. But just wanted to, for the commission's reference, to note that that ratio is all of our assets. And then they talked about, and they interviewed us as well about this, what do you do for capital planning? Do you have a capital plan? How's that relate to your financing plan? Plan that we maintain and update every year. They noted our 2026 revenue bond. Generally, they're observing here that the small munis are comparatively weaker on the capital planning. And then this is around succession planning and the experience of leadership, or maybe the risks, potential for succession and transition in leadership at the sort of finance head level and the general manager level. And then I'll skip the Fidium pole maintenance because this is not something we're dealing with, fortunately. And I think this is more qualitative feedback that the department received from the utility folks they interviewed. We did propose the idea of a automatic power cost adjuster, which is something that GMP has as part of their alternative regulation plan. And so if the market rate for energy goes up, GMP can raise. Vermont Gas has this too. You may have seen that on your VGS bill. There's a portion of their costs that they can just adjust without regulatory approval. And so we've floated that idea for consideration by the department to reduce administrative burden, because if certain energy or other power supply market things change, basically everyone gets in a line at the door to file a rate change because they're all affected. And there's a lag, associated with the approval for that process. And so it would be something that would provide some efficiency for everybody.
And why does GMP have, are they allowed to have that?
They've applied for alternative treatment.
Yeah, there's an
So we could, in
alternative.
theory, do it as just our single utility versus you're looking for a broader.
Well, like GMP has
solution?
an alternative
We would-
regulation plan, which doesn't require the filing of a traditional rate case other than every several years. I think they're doing one right now.
Yeah.
And then there are certain pieces within the alternative regulation structure that can be adjusted, or surcharges, like storm surcharges. If you have a GMP bill, you might see something like that, or power cost adjusters that don't exist in traditional regulation. So the idea here being that maybe there's an aspect of alternative regulation that could be applied for municipals that might be of value. We have something that they don't have, in that we can do these under 3% rate cases and have the relatively non-litigated process, what we're doing right now. That's not something that's available outside of public power. So there's just distinctions.
We can also collect the additional rates 45 days after filing without, and subject to a refund while the case is being reviewed, which GMP can't too. So.
Part of it's because if you're an investor-owned utility, you're earning a rate of return for your shareholder on your capital investments. So the scrutiny of a rate case for an investor-owned utility is going to be heavily focused on that aspect of things,
Right.
whereas for us, that's not relevant, and you'd be focused on other cost of service issues. So there's just big distinctions. Yeah.
Yep. So these are the department's recommendations coming out of this. The power cost adjustment is one of them. Allowing utilities to recover in rates revenues to build up a cash reserve, requiring adoptions of financial and cash management policies, funding a capital reserve using a portion of depreciation, and some other requirements around long-term capital planning. And then secondary, looking at pay rates, market rates, mutual aid agreements, and encouraging regular rate cases, which is certainly the posture we have been in since 2021. And I think that might be, oh, no, there's more, okay. Then there's a slide on residential rates and how the utilities stack up in terms of average dollars per kWh. So BED's here at 72% of the #1 rank. We're in the middle.
And keep in mind, Vermont has the best rates in the region, New England.
Right.
So when we're among the lowest in Vermont, and certainly among the larger utilities, the lowest in Vermont, when we say we have some of the best residential rates in the region, this is the reason why.
Yeah, question, if I understood that correctly, the bottom 4, are those all just basically hydro serving small communities, or is it something different?
Swanton is.
Swanton is.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the other ones there.
Ludlow might be also. Not
was-
sure
that was
about
the-
Northfield or Orleans.
That was the assumption I had, is that for that
Mhm.
low a rate, so Burlington X
Mhm.
that is the lowest.
Yeah, very
Mhm.
strong
Yeah.
residential rates for Burlington.
It's impressive.
And then these are some reliability metrics. So this is the Katy. And we're so low, we have to have our own little red line at the bottom, which we all appreciated for sure.
It's partly due to having a relatively urban and compact
Yeah.
service territory with half the infrastructure underground. So I want to be fair to the rural utilities that
That's
deal
right.
with different issues.
It's a lot
Lots
easier
of it.
for us to achieve than.
It is, but still a really good result. And we know our customers care about this top priority, so.
And then similar on the SAFE index.
And SAFE is the number of outages an average customer sees per year, and the Katy is the hours of duration, just for context. I get that right, Mayor? Yeah, okay.
And that's it.
Can I just ask a quick question on
Mhm.
going back to the recommendations, the primary
Mhm.
and secondary? Does that resonate? Is that helpful? Does that change anything dramatically?
I would say for us, it would not change much dramatically. Certainly, the power cost adjustment could have an impact in the number of rate filings we do.
Yeah.
I think we're doing well on the liquidity and the sort of long-term debt capital.
Right.
A lot of what they've recommended is what we're currently doing already. And certainly, as Darren mentioned before, in the context of the DPS management audit, right, succession planning and staffing, and we've, managed through the pandemic and we had a lot of turnover at that time and some difficulty in recruiting. So that does resonate, being a relatively small organization with a diverse number of jobs to do. We do have some positions that are only 1 or 2 deep, and so we know that we have risk there for sure. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're good on that, as long as commissioners are. Thank you. Pretty impressive, I think, across the board there.
Thanks, yeah.
Thank you all. Darren, you're going to introduce strategic direction.
I am. So I'm going to go right to the packet. And just for context, every year in July, we bring some proposed edits to the strategic direction, which is a 1-page document. We've kept the mission, the values, and the vision pretty consistent, but we've tried to update the initiatives. I do want to say we receive feedback, or we ask for feedback from each area of the organization, and we take proposed edits that way. We received some additional feedback that would have potentially updated the mission, values, vision piece that was a little late breaking, so we weren't able to incorporate it for this year, but we're going to consider it to propose to the commission for next year, just adding a few pieces there that may even better reflect some of our current work. But so given that, the items that we did have, I'll walk through each of the edits. The first is just changing the dates, which is always a non-controversial edit there. Moving to number 4, in the customer space, we have a proposal to add a focus on reducing energy burden and improving affordability as a part of this broader bullet around our efficiency programs, which I think is reflective of our work on equity. And
Can you say a little bit more about the burden? I didn't quite understand the reduced energy.
yeah, thinking about energy burden, and there's been some reports from VEIC around energy burden, what percentage of your income are you paying for energy or for electricity, and making sure it's a reasonable amount, essentially. Our EAP program, Energy Assistance Program, is partly supportive of that concept as well. Within the reliability section, having, in addition to the staff succession planning that exists, documented standard operating procedures is another suggestion here. I think it's very consistent with the work we're doing and will be doing relative to the DPS ARC audit, is documenting more of our processes. So I think this is a well-timed addition proposed. Within the people, process, and technology, a couple of bullets a couple additions within some of the bullets. One is around supporting internships, apprenticeships, and workforce partnerships. Bob, who was here earlier, Bob and Mike Flora, our safety director, recently hosted 2 students from the Burlington High School YES program, which is an end-of-the-year studies program. And they were able to take them to different job sites, teach them about line work, teach them about generation work. So I think of that as an example of the type of thing we can do to help interest people in our work, both students, and then we've done partnerships with Vermont Works for Women in the past and with other partners. So I think this is reflective of that outreach. And then adding just collegiality and respect to the bullet around a culture of integrity, safety, inclusion, innovation, teamwork, cyber awareness, continuous learning and improvement. I think, in fairness to Paul Alexander, he may have suggested the term decorum, which I changed to collegiality.
Thank you, I noticed that.
Yes, very close. Took my editing prerogative there.
It wasn't very collegial of you, Darren.
No, it wasn't. No, I totally lack collegiality on that. A minor edit here, but to develop and strengthen internal policies and procedures as opposed to just strengthening, I think, again, reflecting that we have some work to do on documenting and developing procedures and policies relative to the DPS ARC audit. And I believe those were the edits that we had to propose. A lot of and this is good in a way, a lot of the initiatives that we've listed remain active, remain reflective of our work, remain things that we're focused on. So I view, after having done a more radical kind of revision of this, I think it was more like between 6 to 8 years ago, I view the relative stability and the additions incrementally to be a positive thing. But as mentioned, I would expect next year we might bring some proposals to even more broadly reflect some of our equity work, in particular in the mission values section as well. I'm glad to answer any questions or take any feedback from the commission on any of these items. And you could overrule me and put decorum back in for Paul Alexander if you'd like.
You should own that. I think it's interesting, the benchmarking was pretty enlightening, and then thinking about that in light of some of the stuff that's in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really that, like, in terms of like the sort of low-income assistance programs, right? The energy equity stuff, like the multiple languages, all those things, like, it'd be really interesting to understand how BED benchmarks against the other utilities, because I would say, I assume we would be at the top of the pack yet again, because it was powerful to see those benchmarks and see how good our reliability is, how good our financial management is, all these things. And obviously with the DPS audit, there's room for improvement everywhere, and there's been, things that we need to get better, but it's obviously such a strong story, but it doesn't even tell this part of the story, which I think is really powerful as well.
I recall, and I don't know, Emily, if you saw this, in reading a filing from the Department of Public Service that might have been today or yesterday, they suggested that they were doing a similar benchmarking around low-income programs across utilities that they were going to submit to the PUC, and that could form the basis of some further evaluation. I can't recall which docket it was in, but I was reading a filing today that suggested they were doing some similar work in that space. So as soon as I see that, I'll be glad to share it with the commission. I agree. I think we're one of a handful of utilities that has an energy assistance program. Our discount is not as generous as GMPs or VGSs, but our bills and rates are different too. So on a proportional basis, we're providing a significant benefit relative to our structure. And then a lot of utilities don't have those programs yet. And then certainly with the outreach work and with the equity work and with the translation into various languages and the videos that we're doing to try to explain how energy bills work, how energy improvements can work, I think we are doing some innovative work in that space. I agree.
That's great.
I have a couple questions. Is
Yes.
do any other commissioners? So, yeah, I think just coming from a chief strategy officer role, I have a lot of questions on this, and just
Sure.
to understand how you build it and utilize it. But I think first off, it's great that you're doing this and revisiting it annually. That's definitely a best practice. My first question, I guess is, so who comes together to work on this as far as the team?
Yep.
And then how is it utilized? Is it brought down into performance management and cascaded into goals, or like, and then do you review this periodically? I know we have the data chart at the beginning.
Yes. I want to just jump back up here. So first of all, the process that we did initially to kind of shape this and then to update it, the idea was we wanted everybody in the organization to see a piece of their work at least reflected in this plan. So what we do is we ask the leadership team, so every manager, director, supervisor, to discuss with their group each year, okay, do we have any suggestions? Does this still reflect our work? Do we need to update it? Are there things we're not doing that need to come out? Are there things we are doing that need to go in? So we very much want it to be a bottom-up process where we hear from various folks, where everybody can look at this and see a part of their work. So if you are mowing the lawn at 585 Pine and you're doing it with an electric lawnmower, which you are, you're part of this item down here, which says that we're going to use our facilities, maintain, number 8 here, maintain and invest quality facilities and use them to pilot and showcase new technologies that advance net zero energy. So I think, you might think, oh, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm not doing something about net zero, but you are. Or if you're the line crew and you said, hey, I know the company is interested in electrification and we're using these fossil fuel chainsaws, and can we convert to electric? And I couldn't tell you how excited I was when I heard that from our line workers, bottom up, So it's very much meant to reflect that. One of the ways that we use this, we post it all over the building and on our website, but the values listed here are actually reflected in our employee performance reviews. So each performance review that we do, there is a section on safety, a section on reliability, a section on community and teamwork, and a section on innovation. And so we try to build that in not only to the strategic direction, but to actually have it reflected in our performance reviews. So we're trying to incorporate those values in a deeper way. So that's some of how it shapes our work. We also want it just to be reflective to the public of the things that we're working on. So we try to make sure that the initiatives that are listed here are things that we have some active work product in that space.
Okay, I think it's great to have the bottom up. I guess I'm assuming they're determining those initiatives, the mowing the lawn with electric, because of the downward determination of this is our 2030 net zero energy goal. Thus, they're saying we're going to mow the lawn with an electric mower.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that over a period of time, because this isn't the mission and the values and the vision have been stable for a period of time. But the idea was, can everybody here see a piece of this, and can they think about it in their work? And even when we talked about the net zero roadmap when we launched it in 2019. I remember having a conversation with some of the line workers who have since retired, but were here for, decades and did things a certain way, had a lot of pride in their work. And they were like, well, what does this mean for me? Is this something that means my job is in jeopardy? And I said, no, this is actually, it means you're more important than ever. If we're going to electrify, people aren't just relying on you for turning the lights on, but they're going to be relying on you for their transportation, for their heating, maybe for their lawn equipment, other things like that. So it's partly about just culture change within the organization to think of ourselves differently, to think of ourselves as a utility that's leading in the space, to think about electrification as part of our business case for our workforce, for our ratepayers, and really to think about it as not a monopoly utility that's just selling power and keeping the lights on, but an upstart that's competing for your transportation dollars with EVs and electrification and EV charging. We're competing for your heating dollars with heat pumps and the rates that we want to put into effect there. So it's a little more radical maybe than it even just comes off on the sheet of paper, in my view. Anyway.
And I want to express how grateful I am for that. I think you have a really impressive connective tissue, I would call it, between vision and values and how people show up and how they're connected to the organization, and a lot of buy-in and culture. So I think that's really impressive.
Thank you.
And then a couple thoughts on here as I look at it. One, I think it was a little hard for me because it's calling them strategic objectives, but some of them are mixed as they're sort of initiatives without an objective.
Yeah.
And so it's like kind of hard to read because some say to provide exceptional care or to do this. So some of
Right.
them do have what the objective is, but some of them are just listing, we're going to do this. And so I
Right.
think as you, and this happens in a lot of organizations, but I think as you go through this, figuring out year over year how to refine that to like what is actually our objective, and then I think a best practice for getting staff involved is then to determine, they choose the initiative.
Mhm.
If there's the clear objective and the clear key result of if we're getting there, then they have that full responsibility to say, this is what I'm gonna do. And then, you know, and then they can see if that's moving the needle on the objective. So I think that's one thing that I would suggest in looking at it. And then my other thing too, just a thought, and this could be a lens through how you go about the process annually, but there's two things that I keep thinking about in the commission meetings and asking about, but this sort of like long-term resource strategy supply risk around renewables. I think the long-term strategic role of McNeil, maybe preserving financial position, which that's in here, I think, but those are things that I think you're actually managing well, but I don't really see them represented well enough in here,
Okay.
I would say.
Yep.
So like, I would think about, those are very important strategic objectives in my view for
Right.
you all in the current market environment or supply environment too. So I think that would be something I would encourage you to look at. And then I think my final comment is going to the chart of the dashboard. I think that's an attempt to pick key results to match the objectives. Am I correct? Like if you
Yeah.
look at that, there are a lot of metrics on there, so that I'm assuming there's some like measurement overload. But one of the things I was thinking about is just as we look at the innovate to reach net zero energy, for example, you have I think an objective saying that matches sort of what I'm talking about of advancing district energy, network geothermal, storage
Mhm.
projects. You're saying the initiative versus the objective, but I don't see that here then in your targets per se. It's more about heat pump installs and those kind of things. So I think just like figuring out how do you get uber clear on your objectives so everybody understands them, and then get like the right few metrics, and then you'll be able to cascade it, and then all of your employees will have that creative freedom to determine what am I gonna do that I own in order to hit that objective and key result. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just my
Yeah,
feedback.
I just took some notes,
Yeah.
so we can consider those items. Were you thinking about that for the next iteration, or did you want us to kind of go back and work?
I don't know exactly where you are on the phase of it, like if you're presenting this as this is what you want it to be for the year and it's locked in. If there is another planned revision or you're going back to your leadership team, I think it wouldn't hurt to think about it with that lens,
So-
but I also think it's a long game here.
Yeah. Typically, we would present it in July, you would vote on it in July, and then we publish it, which we can do. If you feel strongly that it's not where it needs to be, we can also take it back and do some work and come back in September. We just won't have it adopted at the turn of the fiscal year. There's no penalty for that. It's an internal document. So it really, as I mentioned, there were a few items that I saw that we would potentially consider for next year that were internal suggestions. So I was making a list of some of the things you were mentioning as well, that we could take back for next year and do more process around. If you feel strongly that you don't want to vote on it this evening and you want us to take it back and do some more work, we can do that as well. It's a commission prerogative.
Do any other commissioners have a thought on that? I guess, Darren, from your perspective, is it disruptive to take it back a month? Or
Nope.
would it be beneficial?
It doesn't hurt. I think there was one time we did it where we brought it in July and there was some feedback that we needed time to incorporate, so we took it back and we came back. Typically, we don't have an August meeting, so one of the things I know you'll probably decide tonight, we don't have anything having brought the battery item that we need in August. So if we bring it back, it would be for September. I'm comfortable with that. I'm not concerned if we wait a couple months. If we want to get some of the feedback, it'd give us time to potentially process some of the other feedback internally. At the same time, if you feel like it's in good enough shape that you want to vote for it tonight, we will take notes on this feedback and we can incorporate it for next year. So it's really your prerogative, and I don't have strong feelings either way.
No. I was gonna say, there's no ripple effects from, like, you mentioned the values connected to the performance reviews or things like that.
No.
That's not off cycle, it's off cycle, it's not impacting.
Yeah, and the values haven't changed, so those will
Right.
continue to be reflected in the performance reviews either way, so not a problem.
I'm supportive of Commissioner Kenny's sort of thoughts on this. I think they're really strong and helpful, and
Yeah.
also in it, if that plus the fact that you had other late input from
Mhm.
members of the staff that weren't able to be worked in, seems like makes a good case to
Yeah.
do it. And I think these documents are most helpful when they're feel really thorough and good, and so
Yeah.
it's fine to run with this one for an extra, what we have here is pretty good already, and
I think so.
So I'm supportive of delaying a vote to give you guys more time to.
Okay. We'll,
Put in that input.
we'll bring back a new copy for September. If at all possible, what I'll try to do is send it to the commission ahead of time so you can take a look, and if you have additional feedback before September, we can work on it so that in September it's ready for a vote and we'll get it updated and printed and published, et cetera. But I don't see any harm in waiting, and I appreciate the feedback.
And I'm happy to, if it's helpful, to help give just
Yeah.
some guidance, not specific to your points for BED, but just
Sure.
structurally.
Yeah.
How it could be more effective for the team, I think.
Absolutely.
I'd be
Happy to take
do that.
feedback.
Okay, so, in the interest of that, do I need to create a motion?
No vote.
No vote necessary.
No vote, just
A thank you?
onto the, yeah, right, just onto commissioners.
Well, yeah, if I can add a comment too, I mean, one thing I wrote down there is, because I'd like the point Commissioner Kenny made about a lot of the discussion that happens with McNeil, that there's not a lot in here in terms of strategic direction of McNeil.
Okay.
So something
Yeah.
in there, I'd like to see something like that really
Mhm.
emphasized in this direction, to really give that view to the public as to what the true strategic objective is, whether you like it or not. This
Mhm.
is what the strategic objective is relative to McNeil and its
Certainly.
impact on BED.
No, I appreciate that. We can incorporate that as well, make a note. I think we've talked about it, it's just not.
It's not in the
It's
document.
almost like,
I
it's
have to
it's
agree.
almost like another section here.
Yeah.
You know, it's energy supply and
It's-
asset and generation assets.
Yeah.
It's tangential, but it is a strategic asset.
Oh,
to
absolutely.
BED, and
Yeah.
per Commissioner Kenny's comments, it's not really listed in there as a strategic objective, so.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you look at the compound annual growth rates in the last 4 or 5 years, and you see Swanton asking for 30%
Mhm.
increase,
Mhm.
this is a reality, right, today. We need to be ready for this.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so moving into commissioners' check-in, I believe. So do any commissioners have additional items they would wish to bring up during this check-in?
No?
No? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, none. Okay, we are now adjourned at 7:53.